Morning, learning as a schus for Shlema Filan Chaya Basarach and as a zecher for the neshama or schus for the neshama of Meir ben Elazar. Are you able to hear me well?
Yes.
I'm getting like a message that the internet is not great. Okay, we're on Samach Gimel Amud Aleph. Mm,
Amar Rabbi Yehuda.
yeah, 6 lines on the top. Amar Yehuda, Shlach Zeh Hashalech Dagim Min Hayam. The shlach is a bird. We're going through the list. There's a list of 20 or so birds in the Torah. So the shlach is the one that fetches fish from the sea. I think it's called a kingfisher. Duchifis shahoidu kofus. Duchifis, the bird called duchifis, is one that its splendor is tied down. Seems to be that it has some kind of crest on its head that is that it extends at the proper time. Tanya Nami Hachi Duchifis Shahoidu Kafis. Zeu Shehevi Shamir Lebeis Hamikdash. This bird, the Duchifis, is the one that brought the shamir that was used to cut the stones in the Beis Hamikdash. You weren't allowed to cut them with iron, with metal, so they had to use this worm. So this bird fetched it. The this bird goes into the deep to fetch fishes. That the bird shalom, when it's a time for a fish to get eaten, it sends this bird to get it, even in the deeps. When he saw an ant, kare kale, that the your tzedek is like the great mountains. Rashi says even a ant has life just like the something as large as a mountain. Amar Mema, Likni ubitni sharyan. The birds called Likni and Bitni are mutter. Shaknai ubatnai, but on the Shaknai ubatnai makom sheno, I guess their names are similar to those. Makom shenogu lechel eichlin, makom shenogu shaloi lechel ein eichlin. Depends on the minute. In fact, can you have kashrus be dependent on each place's minig? You could have minhagim, to be parish from a chet from the draban. How could you have different minhagim about what's kosher? It's a kind of invalid kasha. Haba asa de shrichi pras v'aznia, haba asa de lo shrichi paris v'aznia. These are birds that have a single siman of kashrus, which we know is only the Paris Vaznia. So one of the places that have the minitit, it's because there's no Paris Vaznia. They know that doesn't exist near them, so they don't have to worry if they see these birds that have only one siman. But the other place does have to be chayshish for the Paris Vaznia. Rabaya, koi b'kakoi asiri. The koi and the kakoi are both aser. Kakuasa sharia. But the one that's called the kakuasa is mutter. Marava malku aleh v'karle tachvasa. However, in the west, in Eretz Yisrael, they gave malchus on the kakuasa, and they called it the tachvasa. They held it was not a suffix. It was definitely aser. Maybe it's the same thing with the Paris Vaznia. Tanaraban. Tinshemes, I guess they gave Malchus on it, so it couldn't have been just a suffix. They knew for sure that it was also. Tanaraban. Tinshemes, the Tinshemes is brought twice, actually 3 times in the Torah. First, the background that the list of Ifis, as we're going to see in the Gemara on the bottom soon, was listed twice, once in Vayikra and once in Dvarim. Additionally, there's also a list of shrotzim. The Chinshemes is listed both amongst the Ifis, both as a bird as well as a sheretz. But it's two separate things. There's a Tinshemes of the Ifis and Tinshemes of the shrotzim. Taraban. Tinshemes bo'is sheba Ifis. The Tinshemes is the boss amongst Ifis Rashi says bois, that it shrieks. It makes a loud noise. And the Rashi says it's either a owl who makes a sound, or a bat. How do you know when the Torah says Tinshemes is talking about oif? Maybe it's talking about a sheretz. You can see from how the Torah is nedrash. Davar lam ben yonai b'mach kasem adav ba'oifis avkam ba'oifis. This is in the list of oifis. Why would we assume it's talking about a sheretz? We're saying the list of oifis. Tani nami hachi gabi shrotzim. We have a similar brayso gabi shrotzim chai gabno. Tinshemes boy shebeshrotzim. It says that Tinshemes is the animal that makes a lot of noise, even though the Rashi seems to call it the mole, which as far as I know, is silent. But in some way, it's the bois of shrotzim. I'm going to say, "Mom, you can make this shatter in the dresser bed." To learn it out from the way, this is the way we dash the Torah. Davar lam minyanik. We everything is learned according to the context in which it's brought. That in Shemes it says by shrotzim, avkam b'shrotzim. Since the other things are shrotzim, this is also talking about a sheretz. It's not talking about a. Amar Abaye, boos sheba oifos kifuf, boos sheba shrotzim kurpedoi. This Tinshemes, it's more commonly known as the kifuf or as the kurpedoi. Amar Rav Yehuda. Kais zu hakuk. The kos that's mentioned in the pasuk, Ves Shemes, Ves hakos, that is the cook. Rachem, that's the next one. Harechem, zu shirkuk. That's the shirkuk. Shirkuk, we're going to see. Am Rabbi Yechel, Lamak Shmoi Rechem, Kimit Shebo Rechem Bo Rachmim Laila. When the rechem comes, that's a sign that water is coming, that the rain is coming. So that's why it's called the rachem. Amr Bibi Ba'abayev, hu the Yosef Amidi Va'avid Shirkik. That's only if it stands on top of something, and it makes it sound, the shirkuk sound, which is some kind of coin. Ugemiri the Yosef Ha'arav Sharik, if it sits on the ground and makes that noise, Asa Mashiach, means Mashiach is coming. Shnema Eshekol Lohem Va'kavtzem. I'm going to call to you, and you're going to be gathered together. Amle Ravada Bashimi Lamar Bar of Idi Va'ahudi Yosef Bekarba. There was this one shirkuk that sat amongst the cabbages, or amongst the plowed ground, Bisharak, and it made this sound. Also Glal, and a stone came, Afsake Lamoicha. It started raining, and the hail came down, and one of the pieces of hail smashed its skull and killed it. So obviously Mashiach did not come. Amaliyahu by the Haver. That was a lying shirkuk. It was a Navi Sheker. So that's why it ended up getting killed. Tan Rabban. Oirev ze Oirev. The Torah says, Eskala Oirev leminai. So we dash in. Oirev is talking about the Oirev. Eskala Oirev, it says Eskala Oirev, Lahavi Oirev ha'amaki. It's coming to tell you the deep Oirev. Leminai, Lahavi Oirev ha'ba b'rasha yoinim. It's coming to tell you the Oirev that comes at the head of pigeons, or doves, or pigeons. Amar Mar, Oirev ze Oirev. So the first part of the Brayso, we said Oirev means Oirev. Atu kaman koi, what does it help us to say the Oirev is the Oirev? If we know what it is, then we know what it is. If we don't, we don't. What's the point of saying that? The Oirev is the black Oirev, the black raven. V'cheinu Oimer, Ketzoisov, Taltalim, his locks, his hair is curled. Shchayris ka'oirev ham ka'oirev, black like a raven. Ha'amaki, we said the oirev ha'amaki is the second pasuk. That as kol oirev is the lahavius oirev ha'amaki chiyura. That's a white raven. Doesn't mean actually white. It means a lighter raven. V'cheinu oimer mareyu amak min ar. It says about Negoyim that something that's white appears deeper. So we call it the oirev ha'amaki because it's lighter so it appears deeper than the black Erev. Like the sun appears deeper than the shade. The final thing we said was the Limineu is coming to include the Erev that Bob Rosh Yoinim. It doesn't mean that it leads the Yoinim, ela the Domi racial of the Yoina. It has a head that's similar to that of a pigeon or a dove. Tanur Abban. Hanetz the Hanetz. The Nates is the Nates. Rashi and Taisus address, we just said by Erev, we asked, why does the Erev mean Erev? Well, why do we say it? And he says because Nates is still commonly used by now, but the Erev, I guess, wasn't as similar a Lashon. Lemineu lahavi is bar chire. It's coming to include the bar chire, which is an additional bird that's similar to the Nates. Mar bechire amar Abaya Shurinka. Amar Yehuda. A chasida, another bird that the pasuk mentions amongst the Eifes Tmeis, is the chasida zu daya levana. That's the daya levana, the white daya. Lama nikra shma chasida. And why is it called a chasida? Shows the chasida says chasidis im chavrei seah, because it does good things for its fellows. I think the chasida is the stork. So it stores food and gives it out to its other storks. Ha'anafa zu daya ragzonis. The anafa mentioned in the pasuk is the daya that gets angry. It's not. It's the opposite of the chasida. It's constantly fighting against its the other birds from its species. Amar Chanan bar Rav Chizda, Amar Rav Chizda, Amar Rav Chanan brei de Rava, Amar Rav Esrim va'arba oifes tmein hein. The 24 oifes tmein. Amar Rav Chanan bar Rav Chizda, the heicha. Where do you get the 24? Either Vayikra, Esrim have it. In Vayikra, we mentioned 20 Tommy birds. Either Mishnah Torah, Esrim v'chad have it. And in Dvarim, it says 21. There's a word, even though there's only 20 in Vayikra, there's an extra one, da'ah, that is said in Vayikra, that's not said in Dvarim, so you could add it to it. Akati Esin v'Trinavi, that just gets to 21 up to 22. Amalei hachayam avua, the imach m'shmei derav, lemino, lemineu. It says 4 times in Mishnah Torah and in Vayikra. It says the words lemina, which we said to add additional species. Harei kan arba. Yachi asan v'shishav. Now we have a problem the opposite way. We got up to 26. We said there's 24. Amar Abaya, da'ah ura'ah akasur. The da and the ra'ah. We had added on, we said the da that it says in Vayikra is also added to Dvarim, but it doesn't really help because in Dvarim it already said the Ra'ah, and the da and the Ra'ah are both the same thing.
We're down to 25.
Well, we are working our way back.
We're going down.
Michti. So he asked first the following question. So he says, how do I know Dora is the same thing? And if you say the same thing, in meaning of Vayikra it says da, and in Dvarim it says ra, but like Sivda, it doesn't say the da. El Shma Mina, min ra v'da achasi. It doesn't make sense that you're adding on something in Vayikra that's not in Dvarim. Dvarim, the second one is coming to add on to the first one, so therefore they must be the same thing. In fact, we only knocked down the 26 to 25. Aya and the daya are also the same. By Um, in Vayikra, it says Mina on the Ayah, and then it says Lemina on the Daya, but it doesn't say Lemina on the Ayah by Indvarim. So how could you have something extra in Vayikra that's not mentioned in Dvarim? El Shema Mina Arya V'Daya Achasi. They must be the same, and therefore the Mina of them is also the same. Which I don't know. To me, that seems to get you down to 24, right? Because you're saying both the Aya and the Daya, as well as the Mina of them, are are only one, and we had added four by talking about yeah. Since it's the same, why do we have to say both of them? Because Tanya, Rabbi Yomer, Ekrani Aya Daya. I say that the Aya and the Daya are the same. Lama Nemra, Kadesh Leitin Piskam Pella Baldin Lachli. In order that you shouldn't be able to be Chaylik, Shalaita Ata Kaira Aya Vu Kaira Daya, Ata Kaira Daya Vu Kaira Aya, that you're going to have, we don't want to have confusion, that some people call it Aya and some people call it Daya. Lekach Kasav Mishnah Torah, Beres Aya, Bahadaya, Lemina, says both the Aya and the Daya to tell you, to make sure that you don't miss one of them, and some will say, but this would, the Aya and the Daya are different, and therefore this one, this thing is not the one that's mentioned in the pasuk as being possible. Yeah, yeah, I'm not really sure how the cheshbon works out. Meisvei, lama nishu behema, mipnei hashesua. Why did we have to repeat the list of non-kosher animals? We said the shasua, which we said was a kind of, I think we said it was a kind of rabbit. Or ba'ifis mnei hara'ah. And by the ifis we repeated it because of the ra'ah. My lam the behemoth the hasam lo sufi ifis nami lo sufi. L'chayra, we're saying the da and the ra are the same, but we're saying the hashasu is to add on to what was before. So why shouldn't we say the ra'ah that's mentioned is also to be marba on the list? Like hasam lo sufi hacha lefrushi. No, it's not necessarily the same thing. By the animals we're coming to add. Over here we're coming to explain that the ra'ah and the da'ah are the same thing. Upliga de Bavo. Bavo is chaylik on this whole thing. He doesn't agree to the number 25. The Ra'ah is the ayah. The Ra'ah and the ayah are the same thing. Not the ayah and the daya, but the Ra'ah and the ayah. Ra'ah, it's called the Ra'ah because it sees very far. Yadu ayat. It's a path that's not known by the ayat. And the ayah can't see it, even though the ayah can see very far, it can't see that path. Tana, we learned in the Bryce, so the ayah, it can see so far that it can see a nevela from Bavel in Eretz Yisrael. So that's why it's called the Ra'ah, but it's really the ayah, but it's called the Ra'ah because it's far seeing. With the Ra'ah hainu ayah, Mechlal the Ra'ah, lav hainu Ra'ah. That would seem to indicate that the Da'ah is not the Ra'ah, because we said the ayah is the Ra'ah. Michti, Mishnah Torah Sufa the Asa, Ma'ishna Hachad of Siv, Da'ah, Ma'ishna Hasan, the like Siv, Da'ah, La Shamina, Da'ah Ra'ah, Va'ayah Achas, He. All of them, Da'ah, Ra'ah, Va'ayah, are all one. He. When the Ra'ah, Hainu Ayah, Mechlal the Daya, Lav Hainu Ayah. I might say, since the Ra'ah is the Ayah, L'chayr, the daya is not the same thing as ayah. Ma'ishna hasan d'chsiv l'mineu ayah. Ma'ishna hachad l'chsiv l'mineu ayah. Adaya. It only says it on daya, not on daya. L'shmamina da'ah ura'ah daya va'ayah achasi. According to Bavo, all four of these things are all the same. So you end up, instead of with 25, you end up with only, I think, 22. Minus 3. All four of these are all different names for the same thing. Tanya, Isa and Yudaima, Mea Oifis Tmein Yesh Mizrach. There are 100 Tamei Oifis in the east, v'kulam min ayahin. But they're all different kinds of ayas. So even though we only have a list of however many, 25 or 24 or 21, but includes a lot of other species in there in that rubric. Tani Abim Reder Ravavos, Zion Mace Mini Dogim. There are 700 non-kosher fish. The Ches Meis Mini Chagavim, and there are 800 types of non-kosher grasshoppers. Ul Oifis a mispar. In the Oifis, there's no end. In fact, tomorrow Oifis Chav Dalet have it. Oifis that we said in the passage there's only 24. Why are you saying there's an immeasurable amount? El Oifis Tahirim a mispar. It means to say that the Oifis Tahirim, there's no amount. There's only 24 non-kosher, but there's an infinite, uncountable amount of Oifis Tahirim. Tanya, Rabbi Yomid, Gali Yedufnei Misha Amar V'Hayolam, Shebehemet Meim Merubim Min HaTahiris. He knows that the Bishop knows exactly what animals there are and which are kosher and which are not. And he knows there's more Behemoth's Tmeis. Levikach Mana Kasa B'Tahira. Therefore the Torah told you, gave you a list of the animals that are tar. Gali Yedufnei Misha Amar V'Hayolam, Shebehemet Tahirim Merubim. By Oifis, the Tahirim are more. Ala Tmeim, Lefikach Mana Kasa B'Tmeim. Therefore, by the Oifis, the Torah gives you a list of the Tmeim. My Kamash. Well, why are we saying this? One should always teach things in the shorter way, in a more concise way, to make it more easily remembered. Amar Rav Yitzchak, Oif tar nechel b'mesayros. An oif tar can be eaten by tradition, if one person is handed down from the next. Naman hatzayid leimer, a trapper is trusted to say, Zetar, Masali Rebbe. He can say, this bird, I know from my teacher that it's tar. The teacher has to both be knowledgeable about which bird is which, and to know the name of the bird, he has to be able to identify. He can't just say, I know this bird that you see before you is tar. He has to say, this is a species of dove that is not one of the 24 birds that are tameh. Boy Rav Zera, Rabbi Chacham, a Rabbi Tzayid. We say he has to have a Tzayid can trust the Masorah he has from his Rebbe. Does it mean his Rebbe that he sat with in the yeshiva, or his Rabbi means his master, the person who taught him how to trap? Surprisingly, the Gemara says, Tashma, Dam Rav Yechon, Vusha Baki Bahenu Shesein. He has to know the birds as well as their names. Yamasham Rabbi Tzayid, if it talks about the person who taught him to trap, Shapir. Aliyam Rabbi Chacham, if it means his Rebbe who taught him Torah, Bishlam Shamayu Gameh, the Rebbe might know the names. Gamlu Inu Miyadilhu. Is he going to know which bird is which? Allah Shmamino, Rabbi Tzayid, Shmamino. It has to be his Rebbe who's a master, his person who he learned trapping from. Tanarabban, loichem beitzim in ha'oivdei. You're allowed to buy eggs from a guy b'chol makom in any place. Ve'ich chayshin loy mishum levelis v'loy mishum treifus. You don't have to worry. You're not allowed to eat an egg if an animal died, if a bird died and you found an egg inside of it. If the animal was a treifa, the bird is also the egg is also a nevela. I'm sorry. And if you shech the bird, or even if you kill the bird, and it gave birth to an egg before it died, and then you check it and you see it's a treifa. It's been a treifa from when the egg was laid. It's also not allowed. You don't have to be chayshish, because these are I guess these are not common things. These are all yeah. The roiv eggs are not nevelos and treifus. It's true that roiv oifis are not nevel treifa, but how do you know it's not an oif tummy? How do you know it's not an ostrich egg or some other non-kosher animal, eagle egg? where the guy who's selling it says it's a chicken egg. Why does he have to say it's a chicken egg? Let him just say it's from a kosher bird. Why does he have to specify which bird it is? The guy can say it's from a kosher bird. And you'll say, listen, we checked it out. This is not a chicken egg. He says, no, I didn't mean that kosher bird. I meant a different kosher bird. And he'll be able to avoid being pinned down. Because there are ways, like we'll see, there are simonim that you can determine whether it's not 100%. As the Gemara will ask, why don't we use this just the simonim? But it's enough to get the guy in trouble. So if he says already which bird it is, then he knows he's standing behind it. In fact, Umar lived a bit simonim. Why don't we use the simonim? Why do we have to ask the guy? The Tanya, kisimonim beim, kach simonim dogim. The simonim of a beim are just like the simon of a dog. Simonim dogim is like a daitach. It's not about gasher samarachmana. The simonim of a dog are fins and scales. What does that have to do with eggs? How could you say the simonim of eggs are similar to that are fins and scales? Ela ema, kach simone uvrei dogim. The simonim for kosher eggs are similar to the simonim for the roe of a fish. You know, if you want to get caviar, I don't think the fish, the sturgeon, where actual caviar comes from, is kosher. You get caviar from other fish. So those simonim for those eggs, caviar is made out of eggs, which is called roe. That is similar to general eggs. Tani gabi beim, elu and simoni beim. These are the simoni kashrus of beim. Kosher keduros of aglulos. That those that are round and in a ball, meaning that it's not just flat and round, in 2 dimensions, but it has to be rounded in all 3 dimensions. Roisha echad kad, roisha echad chad. Has to have one end rounded and one end comes to a point, tahira. Then it's tar. Bezer she'akadim and bezer she'achadin. If both ends are rounded or both ends come to a point, tmein, then it's tam. Chelboin mi bechutz, v'chelmoin mi befnim. If the albumin, the white of the yolk of the egg, is on the outside and the yolk is on the inside, tar, like our standard eggs. Chalmoin mi bechutz, v'chelmoin befnim, tmeya. If it's the reverse, that the yolk is on the outside, then it's tummy. Chelmoin v'chalvoin mu'ravin zeh b'zeh. If they're mixed together, b'yadua she baits sheretz, then it's a sheretz and it's tummy. So the Gemara, but in any case, the Gemara is asking, why don't we just look at the simonim and determine whether it's kosher? Why do we need the guy to tell you that it's from a specific kosher bird? Where the egg is already cut up, so you can't look at the shape of the shell to determine if it's like rounded on one end and sharp on the other. So Mother lived at Bechel and Bechalvin. Why don't we just check the yolks and the whites? That's another simon of kashus. Betrufus bekaira, where they're mixed together in the bowl, they're not separate anymore. Are you allowed to buy mixed yolks and eggs from a guy? Vatanya, ein moichrim beitzas treifa la'ovid kechavim. You can't sell a beya that's of a treifa to an ovid kechavim. It's midaraisi. I think it's not. It's also to eat, and we're scared that the ovid kechavim is going to resell it to the yidden. Elim kain trufa b'kaira. The only way you could sell it is if you mix together this beyas treifa. Then the guy is not going to be able to sell it to you. There's the takanas hachanim that you're not allowed to buy a mixed egg from a guy. That's why you can't buy a mixed egg, since we say the only way to sell a treifa to a guy is if it's mixed. So therefore, we're not allowed to buy mixed from the guy. So why can't we look at the siman? Since you're not allowed to buy, you're buying from a guy. Obviously, the yolk and the white are not mixed together because you're not allowed to buy that. So why don't we check that to see if it's a tahira rather than asking the guy? Halam Rav Zera, simonim lav doiraisa. These simonim are not entirely, you can't depend on them. The deraisa, there's no such mention. The Torah doesn't mention them. It's not a halakha l'moshe misinai. Dilatei mehachi hadam ravasi shmoynes sveikas hein. That there are 8 birds that are suffix. Livdik bebein ditu. Why don't we let them? If we have a bird that we're not sure whether it's a kosher bird or not, let it give birth. Let it give an egg, and we'll look at the egg and see if it has the simanim. Shmami no simanim lav da'iraisa. If the simanim are not da'iraisa, you can't depend on them. If that's the case, what's the use of the simanim? If either any of these simanim are missing, vaday tmeya, then you know for sure that it's tameh. Reisha chad, kad. If it has one head that's one side of the egg is sharp and is not rounded, is pointed, and the other one is rounded. If it has all these simanim, the proper simanim, and the guy is telling you that it's from a specific Oivtar, then you can be Saimachem on him Bistama, Letismach Aleim. But Min Hastam, without him saying anything, you can't be Saimach on him, Deka de Urva de Dami Lidiyayna. Because if he just says that I know that it's a kosher bird, you can't be Saimach on him, because the Erev that's similar to the Yaina. Okay. We'll stop over here.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
See you tomorrow.